Welcome everyone to another AZ Ray video. Today we have an amazing, astounding guest for you today. The goal with today, we're gonna have a nice, engaging conversation to inform people of from different walks of lives. Like maybe you're curious about getting into academia, maybe going into grad school, or just like studying in general. Maybe you have some curiosities about anthropology or things of that sort. So I had to scour the globe. I had to find you the coolest, the best person qualified for this conversation. So we have here a very amazing PhD candidate. She's a biological anthropologist, arguably probably the coolest form of anthropology, and I can say that as a culture and archaeology guy. That was pretty cool, arguably the coolest. And I think she would agree with me. So I have my very esteemed guest, Mrs. Fatima Boder Dobbin. How are you doing
Yeah,
today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I will say I am not a PhD candidate yet. That's a term for people who have passed their competency exams, and I have not. So technically, I'm still a PhD student.
Oh, PhD student. Okay.
The
Well,
language in graduate school is crazy.
okay. All right. PhD student,
hmm
Fatima Boder
Yeah.
Dobbin. I guess we have future vision on the episode. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I could edit it out, but I feel like, nah, I
Nah.
you got this, bro. You got it's like I'm
It'll
already
be
talking
there
to
one
I'm
day.
already talking to Professor Fatima, dude. Like, what are you talking about? But yeah, yeah, for the audience that may not know your background and stuff, like if you can just give like a little just brief introduction to yourself, but you don't have to tell us your whole life story. But basically, how did little Fatima, where she was in the past, when did she be like, let's do anthropology? You know what I mean? And oh, let's get into it. And then like, what made you continue this pursuit, and what made you want to even like specialize in biology? And I know we met in field school when we were in
Mhm,
Belize in BVAR. Shout out to
mhm.
BVAR. Woo woo.
I love BVAR.
Absolutely. Belize Valley Archaeological Reconnaissance, in case
Yep,
you guys. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can give them a maybe we'll put the
Oh,
info in
yeah,
the description. There you go. We'll shout out
absolutely.
BVAR. That's how we
Yeah.
met.
Shout
There you
out
go.
BVAR for sure. Honestly, BVAR is one of like anytime somebody asks me for a recommendation for archaeology field school, because there are so many, I'm always like BVAR. Because not just because it was so like well put together, a lot of like really knowledgeable people teaching us. I also feel like it was very economical. So like for the students that don't have a lot of money to be spending on your archaeological field school, which you usually have to pay out of pocket for completely, I think BVAR was the most economical choice. So I definitely want to suggest BVAR. um, yeah.
Absolutely. No, yeah. I completely agree. I'm biased, but no, BVAR is great. Great
Yeah.
resources, fun people. Absolutely. And then, yeah, Jaime always like
hmm
very well respected too. And then, Claire Ebert, everyone involved,
hmm
yeah, it was featured on PBS for crying out loud. Just,
I
just
mean, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, going back to like the original question, how did your quest begin to become
Right,
this
right.
awesome biological anthropologist?
Yeah, I honestly from like high school I was really interested in science. I took like three different physics courses. I took, your normal physics course, then I took AP Physics 1, AP Physics 2. And so I was in physics for a long time and I really liked the idea of using like science to put together a puzzle. Like I loved the idea that there's always going to be a solution, right? There's always a physical reason for something. And so I took that, and into college, I started to, I came in with the major of a forensic science major. And I started at Texas A&M University. And at Texas A&M University, the forensic science major is very broad, but it's born out of the entomology, which is the study of bugs, department. And so we did a lot of like bugs analysis and stuff. But they're very aware of all of the different types of forensics. And so they actually really encourage freshmen to go to conferences to learn about all the different types of forensics. And when I was 18, I went to one of these conferences and I found a talk by a forensic anthropologist, and I completely fell in love. I was like, wow, this is something that I would love to continue to do. I want to learn about the human body, I want to learn about how to use it in a forensic sense, and just gain as much knowledge as I could in that area. And so after that conference, I decided to double major in anthropology. And that's when I started taking more classes than just like osteology and like the stuff that's needed for forensics. And I fell more in love with anthropology than honestly I did for forensics. And so I started really liking the anthropology aspect. And so I decided to do my master's in biological anthropology, which was still like my master's was at Texas State University, and it was a forensic anthropology centered program, but it was a four field approach school. So was taking classes in archaeology, I was taking classes in cultural anthropology as well. And so I got to learn a lot more of like broadly anthropology for my master's. And I honestly just fell in love with the questions of why. I fell in love with the interdisciplinary aspect of cultural, archaeological, and bioanthropology. I feel like that's where my passion really is finding like the intersections of where anthropology um, is interdisciplinary. And that's when I decided I wanted to do way more research than what I was able to do in 2 years as a master's student, and signed on for a PhD in biological anthropology. But I like make it very clear that I want to take a biocultural approach. So I really want to introduce um, cultural anthropology, medical anthropology, and also understand the archaeological context is what I do as well.
Okay, wow. That was an amazing story. And that's cool that you're oh, sorry about that.
No
That's
problem.
cool that you're well-rounded and that you have a little bit of the hard science side with the forensics, a little
Hmm.
bit of entomology, like you said, and then you also have, your bioanthro background, and now and you try to blend them both, which is good. And then for people that
Hmm.
don't know, the four-step approach of anthropology, can you just explain that to them?
Oh yeah, so there's four main in America. There are four main fields of anthropology, and that's cultural anthropology, archaeology, biological anthropology, and linguistics. Linguistics is very um, I don't want to say niche, but it's not common for a lot of schools to have like a main linguistics aspect to their anthropological departments. So it's on I personally have never taken a linguistics class. I think it's interesting, but I also have never had the opportunity to, learn more about linguistics. But I do know that it's one of the four fields.
No, I was lucky enough to take yeah, the good thing when I got my undergrad at UCR, they actually it's a requirement to graduate
Mm,
that you take one of the four. And we
that's
actually
awesome.
had a decently sized like linguistic department in at our anthropology things. No, it was probably one of my favorite classes, just the way to analyze different languages, the way you do like transcriptions and like analyze the way people say, the way language becomes a part of culture and it's almost impossible not to. And then also the conversation of how language becomes like culturally appropriated
Mm,
and like lingos, the way people talk,
mm,
valley talk, which is like,
mhm.
or some call it
Accents.
Kim Kardashian speak because
Mm,
she made it
mhm,
popular again, valley, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, yeah, it's just a little spiel. I know it's not the
yeah.
focus of the talk.
No, I think that's great.
Bio anthro and stuff, but but just to explain it even deeper, how would you define anthropology? What does it mean to you? Because maybe anthropology means something different to you than it does to me because of, we use it differently depending on whatever maybe our career goals there are or how you encounter it in the field and stuff like that. So how would you define anthropology? What does anthropology mean to you? And
Yeah.
and what made you choose that as a career too? Even though you kind
Mhm,
of already gave you don't have to answer the second question because you kind of already answered it in a way
mhm,
because you said you were just like a curious person and you like to blend between
mhm.
cultural studies and science. But like, what does anthropology mean to you, and how would you define it?
Yeah. I absolutely think of anthropology as just humans being curious about other humans and trying to answer questions that come up based off of your day-to-day life. And it could be questions about um, child development. It could be questions about evolutionarily, why does this part of our body do this when this happens in our environment? Um, all kinds of stuff. I think for me, it's literally just about the curiosity and trying to come up with theories and test those theories um, to explain certain parts of being human.
No, that's an awesome answer. Awesome answer. I don't know if I could have done a better job, but that's why I asked you. That's why you're the fancy guy, right? You're, you're the smarty pants, Miss Fatima. So, no, it makes sense, right? The human curiosity, because yeah, you definitely need an intellectual curiosity if you're gonna pursue a PhD, which you're on the journey of. What made you what made you, like, do a PhD? Did you always think you were gonna do a PhD? Like, what are your goals with the PhD? Are you trying to be a professor? Are you just trying to, like, maybe stay in a researcher? Or do you wanna
Yeah,
be, like, more on, like, in the scientific roles? Because you could branch out in different ways, right? Or you can even have, like, a
absolutely.
non-traditional, non-academic role if you like too, maybe, like, government or something like that, or maybe or
Yeah.
what were you thinking? Or what are your visions in a perfect world?
So I think for me, one of the draws of anthropology was research, was always finding new things to be curious about and to do research on. And I think that's what I started coming into the career as, is always wanting to be a researcher. But then in my master's, I had the opportunity to teach, and I taught as at a non-traditional school at Texas State University. So I had students from all kinds of walks of life, and I really enjoyed being able to teach to a diverse student body. And I think that that was something that really awakened in me what I actually wanted to do with this degree, was to become a professor, become a mentor, and help other people to realize their curiosities and realize their interests in research, and really work as a peer with them to answer questions that they are very passionate about themselves.
Oh, look at you being a very, very collaborative,
Yeah.
teacher. I got arguably one of the best approaches to teaching. That's awesome.
hmm
So, okay, so you're open to the idea of just being a researcher, but you also feel completely comfortable becoming a professor because
Yeah.
you got to experience it, right?
Yeah, I think I would like to start out as a mentor really, and at a research facility, but the goal I guess would be to have my own lab where I bring on my own students and we do research together. So I always have that research, but then at some point in my life I hope to be able to uh, lift people up to do what they want to do.
Oh, look at this. See, this is the type of guests we have here on AZ Ray videos. We have, the creme de la creme. Salt of the earth, as people say. So you already hinted to it a little bit as a teacher teaching students and the whole non-traditional aspect. But
Mhm,
I know you can relate as a student and you're still currently a student, but I'm sure
mhm,
you can. And now that you're going into like a PhD program, what are some of the struggles that you've had as a student? Because, unfortunately, you
yeah,
know, we were trying to have a very honest conversation here. And for those people that are curious going into grad school or just school in general, we
mhm,
want to shy them away from it, but we'd be lying if there wasn't any kind of challenges. Like there definitely is, right? So,
yeah,
what are some of the challenges that you had to overcome as a non-traditional student?
yeah, absolutely. So I want to say, no matter what school I was at, I always had there was always pushback about something that I wanted to do. Um, there was always a way that the school had done things that I didn't want to do it that way, and I didn't understand why I couldn't do it the way I wanted to do it. And I had to go through the uh, really hard process of trying to convince a decades old institution that new things can happen and it's okay. So I definitely can understand people, coming into a college or a university and thinking that, doing it exactly the way that the university wants you to do it But I also really want to encourage you to, find your own way as well, because there are pathways that you can go through to do what you want to do. So like for example, in my undergrad, I said that I started out as a forensics major and then I wanted a double major in anthropology. At the time, the anthropology department only had a bachelor's of arts in anthropology, and I was taking a bachelor's of science in forensic science. And so it was terrible to get them to agree to let me to do a double major. Um, and I ended up actually having to do a double degree. So now I have 2 degrees instead of just a double major, because it was just terrible for them to be like, "Oh, like, a lot of the classes that you're taking are similar, but this is completely different degree because one is a bachelor's of arts and one is a bachelor's of science." And so it was just like a lot of back and forth with administrators to try and figure out, the lingo, the steps, the forms that you have to fill out. It's a lot of bureaucratic like mess with institutions, and I'm of the opinion that it's not that deep. Like it should not matter. Um, if there's something that someone wants to do and wants to do the work to accomplish it, I feel like administrators and people should be willing to work with you to make that happen. And unfortunately, that's not the mindset that most people at institutions think.
Yeah, no, sorry to hear that you had to go through all that. You would think that they would want to be more like they would applaud your whole overachieving and whatnot. Or like, hey, look at Fatima, look at that, she's going above and beyond. Yeah, high five. They're like, no, it's complicated for us.
Right. It's a complex situation, so we don't want to work with it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, let me do the work then. Like, if you tell me what to do, I'll do it. And a lot of people, I think, because I was very young and naive, when I took that stance, a lot of people took that to mean that I was telling them I want to do their job. I was telling them I want to do it better than the way that they're doing it. And I, it took a lot and time for me to understand that that's what they were taking from me, especially because a lot of these communications were over email. And so it took a lot for me to understand, oh, these people think I'm like dissing them. These people think that I'm actually trying to like start something with them when really I'm just curious and I want to do what I want to do. And it actually took a lot of like once I realized that I was like stepping on toes and stuff, I was like, okay, we need to have conversations in person so that I can be like very clear with my intentions are not to diss you. My intentions are not to make you feel like you're doing your job wrong. My intentions are nowhere near that. I'm simply advocating for myself.
No, sure. Yeah. And then you never know how people are going to take certain things. Like when you ask them things, then they could take it wrong. And yeah, dang. Yeah, that's well, good job for pulling it off. It's very impressive. I'm sure your
Yeah.
family, your husband, and are very proud. Do you have any pets? Maybe they're proud too.
I wish. No, I mean, my husband's family have pets that I've like grown very, very close to. So maybe they're proud of me, but
Okay, okay. Like I just get the feeling that's a big deal, you know. And you brushed it very nonchalantly, and it's admirable that you were passionate enough to hold on to that instead of folding and just accommodating and be like, all right, I guess I'll just pick the degree. And you were like, no, I refuse. I
right.
will I will have it my way, but not because you're trying to be a renegade or be combative.
Mhm,
You're just, you know, you had a vision and it doesn't
mhm.
seem like a complicated one. And who knows, maybe now your degree exists after that
Yeah.
so it happens too. I
I
remember.
actually ended up being the first one of the first 6 people to graduate from A&M with a bachelor's of science in anthropology. So, we got
Hey,
there in the end.
hey, there you go. But so now that you're telling me like the different struggles and whatnot, I'm sure that was like mentally challenging and whatnot.
Mhm.
What healthy things did you attempt to do then or do you do now to kind of make sure you keep yourself in a nice like headspace? Because yeah, everything
Yeah,
that that you're talking about, you know, you're talking about it in retrospect, right? That's in the
yeah,
past. You overcame it, but I'm sure during it could have been, you know, super challenging and frustrating. So what type of things did
yeah.
you try to do to help you get out of that
Yeah.
uncomfortable space.
I definitely like leaned on my support system a lot. My husband now was my boyfriend at the time, and so he was very supportive. He was very he's an engineering student. He graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, so he's very analytical, very solutions driven. So after he let me rant a lot, we would sit down together and find solutions. We would sit down together and like do our research together to figure out how do we go about this, which was very helpful. I'm the type of person that needs to talk it through. I need to like have somebody to like bounce ideas off of. So it's very much a uh, I needed the support, and I was very lucky and privileged to have that support. Because honestly, I feel like if I didn't have that support, I would have just let it go, like I wouldn't have tried as hard as I did.
Oh, sometimes you just need that amazing best friend, partner, companion to.
Absolutely.
Oh, sounds like you got a good one. That's
I
cool. It's very important.
absolutely lucked out.
Yeah, good for you. I'm happy to hear that. I know you've also mentioned too that that you're like a neurodivergent student. So could you
Mhm.
tell a little bit about just can you define neurodivergent to the audience? Because maybe they
Yeah,
might not know what that is, and then just
yeah.
talk about how that may affect you as a student or maybe even outside in your regular day life.
Yeah, absolutely. So neurodivergence, like neuro having to do with your brain, and then divergence means like being different, I guess is how I would define it. So it's basically having different mental uh, uh, I wouldn't say disabilities, but a lot of people do. Like a lot of what I have are considered disabilities. So I've been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, PTSD, and ADHD. So there's a lot of neurodivergencies there. But there's a lot of also ways that you can work with them. The reason that I consider, or many people consider, these diagnoses to be disabilities is because the world wasn't created to accommodate a brain like mine, right? So the world wasn't created to work with somebody who has a depressive episode and can't get out of bed for 5 days. It just doesn't understand that. And therefore, like, doesn't understand, sometimes you'll need to ask for um, extensions on certain deadlines. And that's just like because of my brain, right? Um, Whereas with other people, it's different, right? Like the world is meant for them to follow this certain path, and as a neurodivergent person, you see that path, and then you also see different things that that person following that path might not see. And you're curious about it as someone or I personally am curious about it, and I want to divulge from that path and want to do different things. Specifically um with my ADHD, it's really hard for me to um, stay on topic without like thinking things through or having engaging conversations. I will have conversations where I'm like moving all across. And so part of me having to like stay on topic for discussions in coursework and stuff means I need to like keep that reminder literally like on my phone or on my computer. I'll have the readings that we were supposed to be reading for that day out there so that I can like always if I can feel myself like moving off the topic, I can like always try and bring me back to the topic. Um, so it's just little things like that, but then also uh, kind of stereotypes and like stigmas against having neurodivergence in academia. I know like when I was first diagnosed, I wasn't diagnosed until um, for most of my diagnoses. I wasn't diagnosed until I was in my master's, and I didn't seek out that diagnosis until there was like a breaking point, right? So throughout my entire undergrad, I still had these like problems, but I didn't, have the words to describe it. I didn't have the coping mechanisms. Um, and I like just went through the world that way. And it wasn't until my master's degree that I was like, oh, like I can start to understand certain parts of my psyche. I can understand why I do the things that I do. and I'll try to like accommodate myself. I'll try and do things to cope, right? And I think it was in my master's when I was like really trying to um like advocate for myself in this way, being like, hey, like this is just how I am as a person. Like it's different than the normal person who's going through the world of academia. And I had some professors who were like, absolutely, we'll work with you on this. Like 100% we'll go through this. And then I had professors that were like, you don't look depressed. So I don't believe you until you get a doctor to sign off on this, which is another like aspect to neurodivergence is that like it's very gatekeepy and heavily relies on um, like medical diagnoses and medical validation, which a lot of graduate students don't have the funds to get those diagnoses. I um, luckily like was very young during my master's program, so I was still on like my parents' insurance, and so I was able to you know find and get diagnosed, but a lot of the time people don't have the ability to do that. And so um, I think that also because I also had talked a little bit about how in my master's I started teaching, and that was also when I was finding out these diagnoses about myself. And I feel like that really shaped my teaching style. Um, I'm the type of person that when I am teaching, if you tell me there's a problem and you want to work with me through it, we're going to work with me. Like, I'm going to work with you through it. I don't need any information to prove that you're having this problem. I don't need any of that. But if you're going to do the work, it doesn't matter if it's late or not. If you're doing that work, I'm going to give you the credit for it. Right. So I think that that really like being a neurodivergent person in academia really shows really showed me how, to go through as an academic um a completely different path than most people in academia. I feel like throughout my entire academic career people were like, "Oh, you have to be, on top of deadlines. Deadlines are so important." After I was diagnosed and after I was like understanding of the different types of people out there with different um, neurodivergencies, I was like, I feel like deadlines are very, very arbitrary. And while I understand that like you have to have a deadline to have something turned in by so that like grades and all of that, I considered myself a very non-traditional teacher where I was like, hey, my grades for the entire semester are due on this day in May. So if you didn't do something in the beginning of the semester in January, and you get it to me before that date, I'll grade it and I'll give you credit for it, which was not the way that a lot of people or a lot of my mentors were um, navigating through academia. And I think that that was like one of the main differences for me.
Dang, what a cool teacher. That's cool. Just to have that. Yeah, it's some people can take advantage of it and procrastinate, or some people can also use it
Oh,
and turn things ahead of time and things like that too.
right.
But then
And I
with
think
it, mhm.
something that like a lot of people so a lot of the neurotypical people in who were teaching at the same time, so people in my own cohort who were teaching the same classes as me and noticed that I was doing this type of thing, they were like, how is that fair to the people who when you gave them a deadline they turned it in at the certain deadline? And the way that I like explain that is that that person didn't need the accommodation. They were able to do it by the deadline, meaning that they didn't need more time than that. And if they did need more time than that, I made it clear that they could reach out to me. And I think that that's the thing about accommodations is that it's not meant to um, lift everybody up the exact same way. It's meant to make a level playing field. So people who need it can use it. And I feel like it's very like if you think about accessibility, very like I feel like the one of the main examples is like an accessible parking spot. Not everybody needs an accessible parking spot, but they're always going to be there for the people who need it. And I feel like that's kind of like how I think about my accommodations.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. And then aside if people have like different mental health challenges or things like that, life happens too, right? What if
Right, absolutely.
they have some kind of personal thing they have to resolve, or could be a financial thing, maybe like they lost a loved one or just the regular thing, or maybe they just got like crazy sickness, right? Like,
Mhm.
especially for those that were in school during COVID, right? To act
Yeah,
like that didn't change academia and whether
absolutely.
of course
No,
it did.
that's
It literally
exactly
stopped the world, you know?
absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna bring up, like, so the time of my master's, I was starting to teach, I was starting to understand myself as a neurodivergent person. It was also beginning of COVID. And so it was also us learning how to move everything to Zoom, learning how to accommodate being at home. And I'm like, well, if we can accommodate this, we can figure out ways to accommodate other people. And I think it really brought about a way to like think of like radical accommodation. Like, how can we like make academia really able for anybody can come in and excel in academia, in my opinion.
Right. No, yeah. It's yeah, because that's its own thing too, right? Because like, it's
Mhm,
like you said earlier, like gatekeeping. It's like
mhm,
instead of there's this idea, this traditional mindset, which I'm personally torn about, to be honest with you, but I'm also a very kind and soft-hearted person. So when it comes to the idea that like hardship and you have to struggle and it has to cost you and it has to be
mhm,
difficult, I get that. And I get that our professors try to give you challenges so you can overcome them. I'm
mhm,
also a martial artist too, been training 10 years.
mhm,
So I get the idea of trying to earn different belts or different skill attributes, certain techniques, conceptual attacks and approaches, etc., defenses, whatever. So I get that too. I get the aspect. I get the struggle of it too. But I don't know. I'm
No,
actually torn about the concept too, to be
I
honest
think
with you.
that's a very good point. I think that there's a difference between like um my like accommodating and then like giving it to people. And I feel like with my accommodation of or like my example of accommodating by giving extra time, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not doing the work. Like the work is still hard. They still have to write essays. They still have to, understand the the information that like they're learning. They still have to do the work of learning. And I think that's how like you can earn it is by doing the work and like doing good work, right? Like there's work that you can do where if somebody turns it in, it's like C level work, it's C level work. But it's also people who I found that people who turned things in late tended to have A level work. They tended to put in a lot of effort towards their work. And so I still think that even if like having the accommodation doesn't take away from the earned aspect of it, in my opinion.
No, I absolutely agree. I wasn't trying to pick on
No,
your approach or nothing.
no. I
It,
was just explaining how you can understand something is earned. Because I do think that like a lot of neurodivergent people do have that kind of insecurity of not wanting to ask for accommodations because they want to earn it, because they want to stick it through, because they want to like go through the hardships. And it took me a long time myself to even ask for accommodations. I didn't get accommodations in my master's degree because I didn't think that I should look for the accommodation. Um, Whereas it's really hard to like overcome that wanting to go through hardship so that you can feel more like you earn it. But I think that when you're in academia, you're in it for the long haul. So it's best not to burn yourself out so quickly. And you're gonna have enough hardships just as the base of going through uh, a really hard and rigorous program, right?
right. Yeah. There's no disagreement there.
Hmm.
Absolutely. No, I know. I completely get your point. I was just saying like the whole like how sometimes it's like I said, I wasn't trying to pick on your curriculum, but the reason why I bring it up too, because I remember as my experience as a student, I remember I can't even remember it, dude. You know how there's like a bunch of different like back end software that people use to submit assignments, whether it's like I don't know,
Um,
Backdoor, like
yeah, like
Blackboard, the
Blackboard. Yeah,
Canvas.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's all kinds of them, right? And
Mhm.
so I remember for ironically, for my biological anthropology teacher, and she's great. I even shout her all the time. Like, even though she was kind of a very strict old school teacher, saying Healy, she has a great book, Close Encounters of Humankind. I even used her book for a video of mine when it came
Nice.
to the history of pets on the channel. Definitely check it out.
Yeah.
But like, dude, she gave me like I had a really good grade in her class, but one of the assignments, like I can't remember if it was Canvas or Blackboard, but it was acting up. And I showed her acted up. I showed her there was like an error. I told her like it wasn't like I'm not
Mhm.
this type of student. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like ask all my other professors, and then you know me personally too. Like
Mhm.
I'm not I don't know. I'm not like a C's gets degrees, guys. Hey, and if you're a
Yeah.
C versus gets degree person, no disrespect here, dude. Hey,
Yeah, absolutely.
whatever floats your boat, and that's what gives you peace. That's what gives you peace. But no, I've always graduated with honors, and I've always had a high GPA. So the fact that she wasn't even willing to hear me out, and I was trying to explain to her that like it wasn't working for me, like she wasn't even having it. I'm like, dang, dude. So you're not gonna give me credit on this assignment? And it even shows I submitted it, and you could even see that I submitted it, but it said some kind of error code. And I emailed her immediately when it happened. Like I tried to do like everything I could. She wasn't being very communicative on my end. So then when by the time I come to class and tell her about it and show her on my laptop, it, like I'm trying to do my best to like save face, but like she wasn't having it at all. And she was
Mhm.
like, and I think in her mind, she thought that she was giving me a way out, or like, oh, he could have just lied, or maybe blah blah blah. Like I could tell that she like
Mhm.
assumed that I was trying to cut a corner, but like, no, I swear, I swear
Right.
that's. But
And
yeah,
I yeah, and I think that that's something that a lot of people who teach don't recognize is that stuff, like, stays with students, right? Like, how long ago was that for you? And you're still thinking about it. Like, it really affects the students, and so I think, like, once I started realizing that I'm in a position to be teaching, I'm in a position to, like, be like either kind or completely unwavering. I was like, I need to choose to be kind. I need to choose to like give people the benefit of the doubt in this situation. Especially when you're in a like master's program, like you're doing more work for no reason basically, right? Like you signed up for this.
right. And then you're like it's a smaller group of people. It's a
Mhm,
very controlled setting, and the pace is much faster. Like you don't have
mhm,
time to be like, what's my thesis gonna be on? It's like, nah, dude, come on. We only have
mhm,
this amount of like semesters or quarters or trimesters, whatever your system is, and it's like that's
mhm.
it. Like time's working against you, so like time is money. No, you're absolutely right. But yeah, thank you for explaining the concept of neurodivergency. Thank you for being an amazing, compassionate instructor, and having the firsthand experience and the compassion and understanding. That's amazing. And yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for sharing all that. It's very important. And yeah, we're definitely advocates of mental health here
mhm.
on AG Ray videos. It's
Nice.
very important. Uh, yeah, it's important, I think talk therapy is important. Any kind of
Mhm.
counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist,
Yeah.
it works. There's a bunch of free resources you can always have access to. Most universities give you some kind of like number or hotline that you can talk to that's
Mhm.
free. There's various apps you can use as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely don't be scared to ask for help, guys. It's like
Yeah.
it's human,
Absolutely.
it's normal. Everyone goes through things, and um, of course, you can always go through family members. You can talk things out with friends, but going through someone who's like a specialist and specializes in that, they'll only get you that much further and give you just additional resources. Because
Yeah.
sometimes listening and venting is part of the solution, but sometimes there could be like some underlying issue that's deeper because of various situations that we go through, and maybe things that we don't even realize that our trauma sometimes that we go through as people.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes you need help with somebody to help you unpack that.
Yeah.
And so you can come from a place of self-love, and that takes time and that takes work. So
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah. I for sure so I didn't actually start therapy until I was in my master's, and it was because I was like, am I crazy? Is what's happening to me right now normal. So I needed like a third person perspective, which is why I sought out therapy because I was talking with my peers and I'm like, they're thinking like me. So I didn't particularly put much weight into them being like, no, like this is wrong for like what this person's doing to you, blah, 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 right? So going to a therapist actually really validates a lot of what you're feeling and it really helps you work through your own feelings about it. Because a lot of the time I just felt bad, but I couldn't articulate that. Like I couldn't figure out why I was feeling bad. I couldn't put words to the feelings. And that's what therapy really helped me do, especially during my masters, was be able to pinpoint what was it that was like making me feel the way that I felt, and then also give name to that and have it be validated by a third person who at that point I like searched for a white woman because I was being like I wanted a white woman's perspective as somebody who wasn't white. And I was like I feel like I'm doing this a certain way and I need to get like an outside perspective. And I think that therapy really helped with that. I will say like I've moved on from that and I am now, seeking therapy from a non-white person, which is also very helpful. But yeah.
You're funny for even mentioning that. But oh, that's funny. No, I've had shoot. I started therapy like 2018, and
Mhm.
so I've had a series of like talking to different people. And as far as ethnicities, I'm trying to remember. My first therapist was Jewish. Second therapist was Hispanic. Third therapist was a guy, which was very cool. It was a very unique experience. It was he was a Greek from Greek descent. And then after that, my last therapist was Hispanic, so I kind of went backwards. You know, me having me Mexican background, like I didn't, yeah. I honestly didn't even base it on. I probably should have done more homework, but I was just like, who can? Because when I
Who's
started,
available?
yeah, honestly, bro, mayday, mayday, need help. So it was just, yeah, that was more of the realm I took, and although I could have picked, but that's funny. Now that I look back, what made me pick between like this name and that name? Was it just the names? I was like, "Oh, yeah." Like, but I did read their profile. It's not like I didn't.
Mhm.
So yeah, because I've been classified as neurodivergent as well. Although I've never asked for my full on diagnosis, but I for sure have PTSD. Um, I know my wife thinks I have ADHD or ADD, but I've told her that, like I don't think I do. I've never been. Yeah, it's funny. That's a whole nother tangent. But yeah, no,
It's very interesting to see your partner's perspective of yourself. It's very interesting.
yeah, yeah. But I feel like sometimes she just picks on me on stuff. But like, I can definitely see it though, because sometimes like I'll space out, but I'm like, people space out. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm here right now being present with you. It doesn't mean I'm not, or
Right.
like sometimes like I'll randomly blur something random. I'm like, okay, so now because I'm random, that means I'm ADD. That's horrible. I can't have a different thought from like another universe. It has to always be this topic. I don't know. But maybe I'm crazy.
I
Maybe
think
all these things is what ADD people say all the time. And it's like, no, dude, you're in denial. I don't know.
I think that kinda speaks to, like, what's the point of the label, right? Like,
Sure.
uh, is it important to have a diagnosis? And I think for the longest time, I wasn't diagnosed as ADHD, but I treated myself as if I was, so that I could follow coping skills that were given to people with ADHD. And, that really helped me. Even though I didn't have, like, the diagnosis for ADHD, I was like, "Okay, so I'm not saying I have it, but if a person with ADHD says that this helps them, maybe I'll do that and see if it helps me." And I still don't think that that meant that I had ADHD, but I think that that's kind of like the best way to think about it is that like you don't have to have the label, you don't have to fully believe that you have the diagnosis, but a lot of these coping mechanisms, skills can be used by a lot of people that don't technically have the diagnosis.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Good healthy mental practices are a lot. And then now that, yeah, you made me, yeah, that made me remember the other thought that I was actually going to bring up too is that I think the biggest thing that therapy helped me with was the idea of feelings versus thoughts.
Mhm.
apparently I'm really good about saying my thoughts when I was doing my
Yeah.
sessions. Like, oh yeah, yeah, that's what you're thinking. But how
Mhm.
are you feeling? I'm like, wait, what? What's the difference? And
Yeah.
like that alone was like, yeah. And I'm sure you and I share this because of our anthropology background. It's very easy for us to be scientific, like, oh, that's the easy part. But it's just
Mhm.
like to kind of to like sometimes we're almost what is it? Too impartial,
Analytical?
too
Mm.
I'm trying to think of the word of shoot. Bias. There we go. We're too
Mm.
unbiased and neutral. Like we're too good at
Mhm.
our careers.
Yeah.
Like we're
Yeah.
stepping out and analyzing ourselves, but that doesn't
Yeah.
tell us how we feel.
No, that's I think, like, more recently in my therapy, I've been like, "Okay, so this is how I'm feeling, and I can understand that when I did this and I said this, this made that other person feel this and feel that, and I can understand that they did this and did this as a response." And you like, I completely, like, overanalyze it and just say what it is, like, "Bop, bop, bop," and she's like, "Okay, wait, slow down. But how do you feel?" Like, you understand that you reacted this way, but in your like, where were you feeling that? Was that in your chest? Did you feel tightness? Did you like truly it takes a while for us to like step back and be like, "Oh, I need to center myself in these discussions. Like I need to center my feelings." When as an anthropologist, you're supposed to be taking like a removed approach to things.
Absolutely. And like sometimes we don't even realize how indoctrinated we are to even like a philosophy in the way we that we
Mhm.
do that to everything. It's like, oh no, this is you now.
Yeah.
We're talking about the person in there, not the scientist, not the researcher, not the like, no, you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yeah.
me. Oh yeah, me. Huh. And like sometimes we're like, oh yeah, but this person's like, okay, yeah, thank you for telling me their perspective. But what about you? No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, yeah, it's important to have an understanding of all that kind of stuff and to give yourself compassion and stuff.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy to even understand. And unfortunately, it's not a way that we're wired. And that's not even blaming our parents. It's just like
Mhm.
it's even though we could, because yeah, shoot, we could probably blame 'em for a couple of things, but it's also like just the concept of mental health, just in general, like I feel like within the last like 10 to 5 years or so, it's kind of slowly losing its stigma and kind of
Mm,
having
mhm.
more like of a healthier reputation with the world and the broader
Mhm.
society. I know that's a big claim, but I think people are still like growing into it. So I'm happy that, parents, teachers, family members, everybody in the wider society is becoming more aware and more compassionate about it and more
Mhm.
understanding about it. Like, hey, just because it's the way that things are used to be done, it doesn't mean it's always the best approach. Doesn't mean it's the healthiest
Mhm.
approach. We can come from a position of love and a position of compassion. And there's better ways of doing things and not ever realizing that the word perfect is real, right? Perfect isn't real, but you can at least strive to be better and understanding that you're always on the path to be better. And mental health, I think, is definitely one of those components.
Mhm. And I think it kind of goes back to being an anthropologist, like being curious. Like you never want to judge something. You always want to try your goal is to understand. So if someone's coming at you from a completely different perspective, telling you something that's happening in their head that you can't see and you don't understand, you're curious about it. You ask questions about it. You try and understand it. You don't necessarily completely like disregard it immediately.
No, absolutely. And sometimes, yeah, that's a good point too. And as an anthropologist, sometimes we're analyzing ourselves instead of just accepting, like, hey, this is how I feel today. This
Mhm.
is how I am at this moment. And now, um, give yourself like even it's almost like having like boundaries. It's interesting. Like the last couple of things yeah, I have completed my therapy per se for this time for this
Mhm.
gap, and now I'm trying to be like, huh, okay, let me not try therapy for a bit because I feel like in a
Mhm.
really good place right now, right?
That's awesome.
And so because there's two different schools about that. Some people think that um like you can take therapy for like a long term like for a long time to work out different like things that you want to do. Some people feel like it's almost like a school, like you kind of go through it for like a brief time. And once you feel like you're good and you move on. But I feel like I don't know, everybody's journey is different, but I'm trying to like step out and to have more like I guess confidence with my own mental health and my coping mechanisms because I can't act like I don't know any of it. Like I told you, 20, I've been doing it
Mhm.
for like almost 10 years. It's like I don't got a good excuse. It's like, you know what I mean? So I have to kind of like let go of the training wheels and see if I can fly on my own. And I'm sure I'll be fine. I'm not trying to say
Mhm,
this to be scary and stuff, but it's just interesting because like sometimes in our own curiosity, in our own like fascinations with ourselves. Sometimes we get caught up in that, and sometimes it's like way more simpler that we just kind of need to give ourselves our own boundaries against ourselves, or aside from
mhm,
other people. Of course, you need to have boundaries against other people, and sometimes you need to make sure you have like a healthy circle. And even sometimes we allow like negative things in our life just because like we want to be loving and accommodating, but sometimes that's not beneficial for us, and sometimes we even do some of those unhealthy habits
mhm.
uh on ourselves because of we're repeating the same patterns, we're repeating the same cycles, even though we don't even realize that we're doing that. And sometimes the
Mhm,
voices in our head isn't even our own voice, it's the voice of someone else, whether
mhm.
it's a family member, anybody that maybe had some kind of negative impact on your life, or it could have even been a positive impact, but
Yes.
maybe sometimes instead of using that voice you need to have your own voice. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that like once you're in therapy, you're in it and you're not supposed to ever leave it. I fully agree with you, like, in trying to find the pace that's good for you and also like make sure that it's like addressing what you want. Like what are you getting out of it? And if you're not getting anything more out of it, I definitely agree with like taking a pause and seeing if you can, live life with the skills that you've come like to learn and then if it starts to get bad again, I think you would be able to know, right?
Right. Oh, wait, never mind. I
Uh,
could be there smiling. What the hell was I thinking? I'm an idiot. No, I'm just kidding, guys. We're just kidding. We're just having fun. But no, sure. If I do need it, I'll go back. But I honestly think, at least for the time being, I feel in a really good place. And now
That's
it's
awesome.
like it's just like a test now, I feel like I got my psychological black belt. As far as knowing me, shoot, I can't speak for everybody else.
Right.
But at least for my own path and at my own peace. And I think it also helps that in the midst of me doing this too, I was also in couples therapy for like about 2 years as well too. Not because me and my wife are going through anything, but we just wanted to be better. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it kind of put us in a much stronger position. So I think we're like a better even team now. You know what I mean? Because
Oh,
we've
that's
had,
awesome.
she's done her own work, and now we've done the couple work, and I've done mine. So we're just in this very cute place.
That's
I
awesome.
feel like I've like re-fallen in love with my wife all over again. I mentioned that on the other episode too, that it's like, we were able to we're like on this other level, and like I feel like I'm getting to know her in a beautiful new type of way. Not that I don't know her, but we're both
Mhm,
evolving into different people because we both have like separate journeys in our life, even though we're like, oh hey, you're right next to the road of my journey of life, but
mhm.
we have separate journeys nonetheless.
Yeah,
And yeah, we're in a healthier space and stuff like that. So
that's really beautiful, and I honestly commend you for, speaking like, I think it's really important. I think when people try and find couples therapy, it's because there's a problem, and I think that couples therapy can help a lot of couples without any problems. And I think it's probably better to start going when you don't have problems because that's when you're more open to each other, right? You don't have that resentment yet. You're more likely to be curious and kind instead of judgmental. So I
yeah.
definitely commend y'all on that. That's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. And I appreciate that. No, it was definitely my wife's idea. Even though she felt like we were going through like a troubling time, but it was nothing like super crazy, but I think it was the combination of like us like starting to have like a house together and start kind of like we're on the path to like build that family thing. So I think
Hmm.
we kind of share the mind to like, hey, let's make sure we have a healthy home, a healthy mindset, let's not.
Get in sync.
Right, and, like, make sure we're not projecting any of our own traumas onto a future potential offspring, or now we got
Mhm.
2 doggies right now, but, once we hit that next, chapter, God willing, we wanna make sure we're in that right headspace too, so, yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the support.
Yeah,
And, yeah,
absolutely.
thank you too for your vulnerability too. I know this stuff isn't easy to talk about, but I appreciate you being open as well. Because like, this, mental health is important, aside from, the coolness of biological anthropology. I think,
Mhm,
mental health is probably also, like, a big, theme for this conversation and for this interview. Because I would argue that it's probably the most important thing for
mhm.
students, right? Because like,
Yeah,
I'm almost giving you a leading question, but, you're right, because like, if you were to give any advice to future students, I'm sure mental health would also be a component of it, right? Or what kind of
yeah,
advice would you give to future students to make sure they're
yeah.
having, like, a healthy experience as they're progressing, whether it's their undergrad into graduate school? And for people that don't know what undergrad is, like, what do all these terms mean? I don't know this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Well, undergrad is like, when you get like your bachelor's degree, and then graduate school is either when you get your master's, you can finish there. But if you want to be a fancy schmooshy pants, you can get a PhD or like a doctorate degree. So that's what considered. So master's and PhD is considered graduate, and undergraduate is bachelor's.
Mhm.
But yeah, what kind of advice would you give to students now that,
I
especially if you have such a wealth of knowledge through all the things that you've gone through? So I think you could be an
yeah.
amazing resource to other students. So what would you advise?
I absolutely would recommend, having a support system, like a very strong support system. And if you don't have that, I recommend reaching out to find one. I One of the things that at every school that I've been to, there's always been a mental health um, department, part of the student health services, and then they also usually have like um, a group like support group for all kinds of stuff. They have support groups for LGBTQIA students. They have support groups for first generation students. They have support groups for um, mental health advocates and things like that. So I would definitely, if you don't have a strong support group starting out with your I would say it's not super relevant to undergrad, but more so for graduate school. So for your master's or for a PhD, is reaching out to those types of groups because I think having those peers to work through issues with and to commiserate with and to validate how you're feeling about certain things is really important. And the other thing that I would fully recommend is to tread lightly around unfortunately, you need to tread lightly on this subject with your professors, with the institution. One of the things that I was told recently was I was very open with my diagnoses, and the Office of Disability at my school was like, "Oh, we 100% don't recommend you do that." And I was shocked. I was like, "Wait, I thought, like, mental health is super important. I thought it's, like, important to be very open about these things." And my Office of Disabilities was like, "Absolutely, we think it's important to be open about it, but unfortunately, we cannot, like, recommend that because many people of in the institution, many professors will then see you differently, will then view you from a different light. So they actually recommend you don't give that information up unless you know for a fact how they're going to respond to it. And you know that they're going to respond positively to it. Um, so definitely suss out your professors if you want to be talking to them about mental health. Make sure that, you have it on good authority that they would be receptive to that kind of conversation. Because not having a good conversation with professors about mental health is even more traumatizing. So I would definitely want to recommend you tread lightly on that area.
Okay, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, because it's one of those topics that you just don't know how someone else is going to respond, and you don't
Hmm.
want them to respond negatively or treat you differently in some kind of negative way. So I guess that makes sense. No, I'm surprised to hear that too. But no, thank
Right?
you. Yeah.
And
Dang, that's a
oftentimes it's like it's not even a bad a necessarily outwardly negative response. It's just a ignorant response, and
true.
that can be just as damaging to the student as
Absolutely.
a negative response. And so that's why I recommend not to, especially if you don't have a support system quite yet. Don't have these conversations with your professors until you do. Um, and then, like, it took I definitely have had multiple conversations with professors that were negative, ignorant, and then also positive. Um, and I think it took a long time for me to understand that an ignorant response to these types of conversations have nothing to do with me, right? I internalized that for a long time, and it wasn't until I like really talked about it in my therapy that I was like able to see it as in like, not my fault. So if you're not going to therapy and if you don't have a support system, I think it's very detrimental to the student to receive an ignorant or a negative response to these conversations. And that's why I highly recommend treading lightly on these subjects.
No, that's really good advice. So yeah, yeah, cool. So definitely take advantage of your different collegiate mental health resources, guys, whether undergrad or graduate school. Whenever you need it, go for it. But just as Fatima said, just kind of tread lightly, just be careful, and
Mhm,
but more for your own well-being. Make sure you get your health, and I'm sure as far as like if you're not sure how to suss it out, I think it also depends like if you're able to kind of build a certain bond with the professors. Some
mhm,
professors are more available than others, or you might like click with certain of them better. Probably in those situations you probably can maybe meet with them at their office hours and kind of have a
mhm,
one-on-one conversation, and then they'll probably be more receptive. But if you have some other student or other teachers and they're more like strict with their students, you kind of like, "Urgh." Say, yeah, maybe don't tell that guy or girl or
mhm,
non-gender binary, no matter what they are, right? So do your best to use common sense and whatnot, and
mhm.
yeah. So
Yeah, and if you wanna suss out a conversation, I would, like, start out without making it personal, like, see if there's a way to bring it up where you're like, "Oh, a friend of mine is going through this," or, like, make it so that it's not about you, and that way you can kind of see exactly how they're gonna react. Because if they are going through the mental gymnastics of trying to, present themselves in a certain way in front of you because it's about you, it's detrimental to you because you won't be able to know their full, like, feelings about it, and you need to know where they stand if you're going to bring it up with them more personally.
no, that's good advice. Thank you for that little tip too. So there you go. You
Yeah.
got a tactic, guys, in case you need to
Yeah.
encounter. So just to wrap things up, just in general with this amazing talk, thank you again for your time. That
Right.
conversation's been great, and I'm sure the viewers and listeners will get a lot of great nuggets and information from it. Uh, what are what are like you already kind of talked about things in undergrad. Have you gone through any like challenges as like a PhD student? Has it been hard to stay motivated and things like that? Like what have you encountered? How have you tried to combat it as your PhD student currently for your program?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually having like quite a difficult time in my PhD currently. I again had some difficulties where I wanted to do a certain like class, right? I wanted to take a certain class, and I was told that like I shouldn't take that class. And I asked, why can't I take this class? And they said nobody's taken it in your position before. And I said, okay, so it's not been done before. Can you give me a reason for why I shouldn't do this? And I just came back with, no one's done it like this before. I'm like, okay, but is there a reason that I shouldn't do this? Because if you don't give me a good reason besides no one's done this before, I'm gonna do it. And I never got a clear reason besides no one's done it before. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna pay for it. So it shouldn't be a problem, right? Like if the school's not gonna pay for it, even though they should have paid for it, even if they're not gonna pay for it, I'm gonna pay out of pocket for this, and I'm gonna do it. Turns out they were able to take money away from me in another situation because of that. And they never explained that to me. And so I got really upset with them about it. We were like talking over emails about it. and it just became like this big thing where I was seen as like a problem student, and therefore like the department is trying to like make me not be able to finish here because of like me trying to advocate for myself in this situation. So currently I'm working through, trying to find somebody to like work with at the university who's okay with me doing things the way that I want to do them. And when it doesn't harm anyone, right? Like it's not like I'm not doing it, I'm not doing these the way that the school wants me to do it just for no reason. I'm actually wanting to learn and do things in a way that will like further my education. And I feel like I'm the one who should be able to decide how I educate myself and which classes I should be able to take. It's a crazy idea that, someone who's paying for school to be able to choose what school they like, what classes they take. But yeah, so that's where I'm at right now, where it's like a really sticky situation where like the department and I are not on good terms. Where they are like trying to get me to master out, even though I already have a master's. I'm actually like working with a lawyer right now to try and figure out like because I was given a PhD offer for 5 years, but they were trying to get me to master out, and they're trying to tell me that I have to master out, and I'm like, I don't think that that's legal. So working with a lawyer to get through this. But yeah, that's kind of the situation that I'm in currently. And honestly, I don't have like a solution yet because it's still ongoing, but working through it. Sorry if that like kind of went on a rant.
No, please, thank you for telling us these realistic life stories and things
Hmm.
that PhD students may encounter for like a simple thing of you trying to be an overachiever or take a class or a course or a subject that you feel like is only going to benefit your thesis, which we'll get into in a second.
Hmm.
I'll ask you that in a bit. But yeah, you would think they would be more accommodating. And then the other
Yeah.
thing too, to give you guys a little bit of background, right? These are two different universities, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So I know you guys. It's like, hey, how come that story sounds familiar? I'm like, yeah, it does,
Hmm.
right? But it's completely different. Yeah,
Every degree that I've had is from a different university. So my bachelor's degree is from one university, my master's degree is from another university, and I'm at a third different university to do my PhD. So even though there's common threads of strife throughout academia, they are all at different universities. And I've been at uh, an extremely like affluent public university, an extremely non-affluent public university, and now I'm at an extremely affluent private university. And I will say there are differences between them, but there is still strife in academia in all of them.
is this another one of the reasons why you felt like you wanted to kind of get this information out there so other students would be informed that these are things that they may potentially encounter?
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And I think that like especially with anthropology, I feel like the vibe of anthropology is like, oh, we're so accepting. We want to accommodate you. We want diversity. We want inclusion. We're like totally like with it. And I feel like my experience has been anytime I was like, okay, like let's do that, has been we don't want to do it that way though. Like, we want to celebrate diversity. We want to celebrate, we want to include more people. And I'm like, okay, here's a way that we could include and be more inclusive. And then I'm immediately told, well, that's the wrong way to do it. I was like, okay, but I thought we were on the same page here. So I think it's important that while from the outside looking in, anthropology is seen as a more like progressive department, as a more progressive um, study subject. I think that you still have to understand that they're part of institutions that were, you know, entrenched with the ideals of not being progressive. So it's really hard to reconcile that, and then also to be wary of that because I was not wary of that, and I feel like I should have been.
no, sure, no, but how could you have known, right? That's the other thing
Right.
too. It's kind of tricky. And the thing is too is that just because professors or different like faculty members or staff are telling you this, it doesn't mean that they agree with them, right? So
Right, absolutely.
it could be like the bigger people at B, right? It could be the chancellor, it could be the dean. And honestly, they could probably just be being a headache just because they might have to talk to different colleges. Because that's the thing, too, guys. Like when you go to university, within the same university, you have different colleges, and they're usually separate by like relevant sister degrees, and they'll have them in separate colleges. And you would think that because it's part of the same university, we'd be like, oh, we'll just have them talk to each other, we'll
Mhm,
collaborate. But that's like moving hell and high water. It's almost like dealing with little mini city halls, and you have
mhm,
to get like the big county or the governor to get everyone in accordance, even though these cities might have different ideas. And I'm using the city metaphor to apply to the different colleges and schools because yeah,
yes.
I had a similar issue as you when I
Mhm,
because I was trying to double major too, but
mhm,
I was already a non-traditional student. I was already working 2 to 3 jobs as going into school, and I'm like, "All right, whatever, you win this battle." But what I was still able to do to still kind of accommodate and also graduate with the Bachelor of Science too. I was
mhm.
able to take like 190 courses. Like I was able to make
Mm,
like my own little like with like thesis and like
yeah.
whatever. I'm gonna do my own thing. And
Mhm,
like and I was able to accommodate it that way and did extra work, but I'm like, and little did I know that that was my way of getting honors. I'm like, oh,
mhm,
I didn't even know that that means that like, yeah, I didn't realize that I was actually doing something that like an honors student was doing.
mhm.
Because I guess the way that university did it wasn't based on your GPA. You had to take a certain types of classes, and I'm like, oh, I just wanted to do that because I'm a nerd.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that wasn't a word. I'm not as
yeah.
cool as you though with a double degree, but I kind of know what you're saying about like the whole dealing with
No,
it.
absolutely.
You dealt with it. I was just like, I got no time. It's like either deal with this or I'm gonna miss a shift. I'm like, nah, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna. So
Well,
no, my
I'm very
respect.
stubborn.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you that next. Where do you think you get like this fighting spirit on? And it also seems like, and I say this as a compliment, I don't say this with judgment. It almost seems like you're negatively motivated in the sense that, like, when someone tells you you can't, like, you want to prove them wrong. Like, where do you think
Mhm.
you get this fighting spirit from, Fatima?
Honestly, I think I've had it kind of like my whole life. I grew up, like in a Muslim family, and so I was taught at a very young age that like I was gonna ruffle feathers. I grew up in Texas as a Muslim, so it was very clear that like the society that was around me was always gonna not be on or not always, but mostly wasn't gonna be on my side. And so I think that like my family kind of like it told like taught us how to stand up for yourself, taught you how to um challenge things. And I think and even in high school I was ruffling feathers and like when people were telling me not to do things in high school, I would be like, why? Can you give me an example of like what is the reason for this? And I think that again, that falls into my, like, curiosity, like, I need to know things, like, I feel like nowadays, like, especially in academia, when you're asking questions of, like, why, when regards to, like, rules and, like, regulations, people get very, very, defensive about it, and they view you as being, assertive and, well, I don't know if they would have thought I was assertive had I been a white woman doing this. Who's to say? But they do view you as assertive if you are like asking questions about why is something this way. And I think I've always been okay with being viewed as assertive. And I think that like growing up um, in Texas, having to be assertive has kind of like brought me to where I am, where I'm okay with being viewed as assertive. And I personally don't see myself as aggressive. And I think that being nice and um, is different than like being mean. I feel like I can be not nice and but also I'm not mean and I'm just neutral. And I think people view my neutral as assertive and aggressive and mean when in reality I didn't say anything that was mean. I did not, insult you. I didn't do anything against you. So the way that you're viewing my neutrality as aggressiveness and meanness, that's just more about why are you jumping to that conclusion, right? That's just more about you and your projection than it does about me and what I'm trying to understand.
Oh, that's well said. And I can vouch for Fatima. She's a total sweetheart. She's chill, she's easygoing, but she stands her ground. Like any
Yeah.
person should. Everyone's allowed to have like boundaries and limitations, and if you want to fight for something, well then you fight for it because it matters to you. So
Hmm.
just to end it on fighting and things to matter to you, what is this amazing thesis topic that you're fighting to, that you even got
Hmm.
lawyers involved? So what's this amazing topic that I'm sure the
Yeah.
audience is curious about, because we've gone over a lot of topics, right? We gave them a
Hmm.
general understanding of anthropology. We broke down a little bit about your background. We told them a little bit about your story, the value of mental health, but now the big shebang. But like, what does she do? Like, what does she
Yeah.
study? So please tell us, what is this amazing thing that you're so passionate about, and what's your vision with your thesis?
Yeah. So I study the differences of sex in humans. And so for my master's, I was looking at it as from an osteological perspective because that's what the school, like the resources from the school that I was at, is that they had a really strong osteological collection. So I was looking at the pelvis and the differences between um, biological males and biological females, and seeing if there is more. The differences that we view as anthropologists are whether or not there is this certain um, characteristic of the pelvis, right? They're like, oh, there's these three main characteristics of the pelvis that we look for. And if they have them, we consider them to be probably female. And I was like, okay, well, all these three specific characteristics are found on this one pubis bone. So if I want to look at this pubis bone, I looked at it from a 3D geometric morphometric analysis to see if I could uh, find a spectrum within that shape, to see if there was a spectrum of that shape, to see if like there are, some female skeletons that look a little bit more male and some male that look a little bit more female, and see if there's like a range, or is it actually bimodal the way that um, basic generic biology tells you that it should be. And I did find that there was overlap between, males and females. And I thought that that was really interesting, especially since it's coming from a bone perspective, which is considered something more like uh, unmoving in the body, and not something that's super, what's the word? Not adaptive, but like pliable, flexible, I guess. I'm trying to think of the word, but it'll come to me. So that was my thesis for my master's. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The pubis is that pink one right there.
Yeah,
So that's
okay.
kind of what I was looking
Sure, this
at.
area, right? Okay. Yeah, just to
Yeah,
give people context. No, I get what you're saying though. I get what you're saying, that even though we think that like there's certain patterns, maybe the patterns aren't as like generic and like standard as we may think, which is super interesting.
right. Because those characteristics, right, that we attribute to females are only about 80% of the time correct, which a high percentage. It's a good probability that if they have, 80% of the time, but there's still that 20% of people. And so I wanted to understand that 20%. Um, and for a master's degree, I wasn't able to completely understand the 20% with my 1 year of research. So I wanted to also like move further away from just osteology for my PhD. And so I wanted to look at hormones, because hormones are very adaptive to the environment. So, like, things can change in your environment and that will change your hormones. And then your hormones actually change a lot of your softer tissues as well. And so I wanted to look at your face, because your face is made up of a lot of things besides just bone. You have a lot of, like, your entire nose is cartilage, and hormones can affect that a lot easier than it would, say, your pubis bone. So I wanted to look at, see if we can connect um, hormones to the way that a face shape is. So I wanted to kind of um, map out the face of certain people and then take their um, testosterone levels and their um, estrogen levels and see if I can correlate that to certain face shapes. And again, see if there's a spectrum. And then also, I wanted to, so that's like one part of it. And I also wanted to look at that with people who are undergoing hormone therapies. So trans masculine individuals who are undergoing testosterone therapy, I wanted to track how their face will change over a year of using hormone therapies. Unfortunately, with all these funding cuts to transgender research, I don't have funding for that second part, but I still am able to start with the first part, which I think will have a base layer for the second part of my research.
Cool. Could you still like apply to like scholarships or something to like still
Yeah.
potentially,
Yeah.
even though
So
the school's being interesting to not, you know?
yeah. So I can't apply. So right now, I mean, I could apply for like a NIH grant or an NSF grant, but it's very clear that I won't get them under the current administration. So I am looking towards more of privately funded. So things like the Ford Fellowship or the Warner Gren, which is an anthropology specific fellowship that are privately supported by private donors, not the federal government. Um, but yeah, that's where I'm focusing my efforts to find funding.
No, yeah, I understand. We live in interesting, chaotic, polarizing times, to say the
Mhm.
least. And no, that's very commendable research, and no, it makes a lot of sense. I know since I mostly work as an archaeologist, and when I do like CRM stuff, when we do encounter bones, yeah, it's not as linear as people might think. It's actually, especially when you encounter pelvic and things like that, it's very easy to assume oh, like it's actually not as easy as you may think. For the common person, like, oh, we'll just clearly define this as a boy and then clear this as a girl, like, simplest terms, but it's actually a
Mhm.
rigorous process, and it's actually a lot harder than you may realize. And especially when most of the stuff I'm encountering is usually 100 years plus old. So then I'm also doing like another layer of it. It's like, so this little detail, I'm gonna make
Mhm.
an assumption or an act, and like statement, and I have to put this in a file, and I have to put a legal stamp of approval, and that
Right.
thing's notarized, and that's thing saying, and it's like, it's kind of a lot of pressure, right?
Mhm.
And people would be surprised how like sometimes it's just like a small little size difference, a small little can like completely change the way someone like we identify them via sex. And it's, yeah, it's not as easy as you may think. So that's amazing that you're doing that, and it's very breakthrough, very cool. And the whole facial component is very interesting because like there's a whole hormonal element, but I've also seen it as like a
Yeah.
martial artist. I've seen people's like facial structure change depending on like the type of martial arts do, the type of activities they do, and the types of like lifestyles they live. Like if they're like, yeah, I totally know what you mean. That like, and then hormones are a very unique thing because they can be manipulated aside from hormonal treatment, like you're talking about. But like everything affects hormones, like
Yeah.
sunlight, vitamins, nutrition, stress, like stress probably more than
Diet,
anything.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's yeah, you piqued my interest, shoot. So yeah, if you guys know any amazing donors or any good
Yeah.
organizations or research funds that are willing to show amazing Miss Fatima Bauderdam some love, please leave a comment
Yeah,
below.
absolutely.
There
I'll take
you
any lead.
there you go. Sh She will, gladly accept your money, but she will use it for the right causes, we promise.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, you have any, like, final thoughts or anything else that you wanna share? And thank you again for sharing your awesome thesis. It's
Oh,
like
yeah, no problem. Um, I don't have much to share. I think like I've been talking a lot about the drawbacks of academia and which is unfortunately like my the things that like stick out in my mind about my experiences are always going to be the negative ones, but they're like just talking about BVAR is like one very non-negative, super positive aspect of being an anthropologist, and I think that a lot of the good does outweigh the bad. Um, and I think that there are many people who are working to eliminate the bad. So I do think that like I still am very much in love with anthropology as a field, and I do support people going into the field for sure.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah. I don't think you came across like someone that doesn't like to feel. But like you said earlier, because of the current administration, and then fortunately that does trickle down into colleges, which are
Mhm.
political in their own. Even if they don't want to be, like, they don't have a choice, like they're
Yeah.
government funded. Even if it is private, they still have to go through various state and
Mhm.
local regulations. Like, you know what I mean? They're not like free and sovereign, like separate little mini cities or nations that can do their own things, right? So all these layers play a role. But yeah, no, anthropology, as you said, BVAR, it's an amazing network. There's an amazing community of people, and based on your very informed thesis, I can tell that anthropology has been a huge value into your life, and that,
Mhm.
of course, that you're passionate about it and you're interesting about it. And like you mentioned earlier about the human curiosity, you definitely still share that. And just because, political things within the school, we're not even talking about the wider realm of politics, are becoming
Mhm.
challenging, I don't think it means that you don't like your academic experience, for sure. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
anthropology rules, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you again for your time.
Thank you
Don't
for
forget
having me.
to Absolutely, don't forget to like and subscribe to this, and please give us a thumbs up too. Even if you don't like it, just give us a thumbs up. It's all right. And then, please share this to someone you know, someone who may be curious about going to school, going to grad school. Just like Fatima said, we're not trying to scare you away from school, but we're being honest with you about some of the potential challenges, and
Mhm.
we'd rather be upfront about it than sugarcoat it. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
because school's great, right? You've had positive experiences too, but hey, sometimes school is challenging too.
Mhm.
And cool. Thank you again for your time, and you guys have an amazing day.